Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes. I will wait until more people join on the webinar. All right, we will get started with some introductions. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. We're really excited about it. We're hosting this webinar in partnership with the California Housing Partnership and AEA Clean Energy. So I'll pass it off momentarily to Ian Sharples to kind of tell you more about that. But yes, today's session is going to talk about maximizing efficiency and minimizing costs and how to integrate all electric design review into affordable housing developments. So with that, I will hand it off to Ian.
All right, howdy. Welcome everybody. My name, like Danielle mentioned, is Ian Sharples. I'm a sustainable housing program manager at the California Housing Partnership. I work primarily on the build program that we're going to be discussing today, but I also work on a number of other sustainability related programs. And one of the things I've noticed that kind of inspired the program today is that the build program plays very nicely with other programs, especially the TA component. So this is a free resource that is available to developers and other stakeholders, especially in Southern California. And we want to make sure everybody's aware of it and is able to help kind of maximize their new construction designs for a changing energy landscape. So just by way of a little bit of introduction to the build program, this is a CEC, California Energy Commission program. It stands for the Building Initiative for a Low Emissions Development Program. And what it is, it's kind of intended as a market transformation program. So I'm sure for the developers in the audience, you're all aware that the building codes have been changing, building codes and energy codes. So right now, California requires electric ready for all new construction, but there are some jurisdictions that require all electric already. So the way build fits into this is that it's kind of intended as a market transformation program where we are transitioning from the electric ready present to the all electric future. So there's a lot of really exciting technologies out there that Ari's going to get into that we want to make sure are available for all Californians and are able to benefit low-income Californians especially. So just kind of a quick look at what is available with this program. Focus today is going to be on the 300 hours of free technical assistance. So that is no cost. You can apply for it even if you don't have a project or development ready. You're just trying to understand how to integrate all electric uh, design into your portfolio. There's also financial incentives available. It is broken out by IOU territory. So for Southern California, SoCalGas territory. There's still about $14 million in financial incentives available, but there's still quite a bit of technical assistance available as well. So applicants, developers are able to receive up to $2 million in incentives, either in one project or they can spread that $2 million across multiple developments. There's also a new adopter design incentive of up to $100,000. What that is if you're building your first all-electric, low-income multifamily development, you're eligible for this bonus to help kind of defray your direct design costs that would be associated with building all-electric. And as Vedika is going to point out later, it's really encouraged to layer the funds with other programs and other incentives. So this is something that is a really great resource if you're building a new construction or an extensive kind of gut rehab where 50% or more of the weight-bearing walls are taken out. There's also, as well, reduction in long-term utility costs and an elimination of gas infrastructure costs. So that's An important part of kind of the financial planning of any sort of new construction is what are going to be the long-term maintenance costs. And this will help you reduce those in the long run. In terms of what projects are eligible, so it is low-income residential housing. The income restrictions vary a little bit depending on project location and the type of housing. If you're interested, give me a call. I'll be able to go over that with you if you're interested. It's also, it does need to be all electric and no hookups to the gas distribution grid. You do need to demonstrate mild resident utility savings, and it does need to be in one of the 4 IOU gas service territories. So one thing to note is that for the TA services, it isn't just developers who are able to access these services. Other stakeholders such as architects and designers are able to access them as well. So a little bit on kind of what incentives are included in this. There's a base greenhouse gas incentive based on greenhouse gas emissions voided. There's a building efficiency incentive that's based on how efficient you are above the existing code. There's an incremental photovoltaic incentive based on how much solar you're installing above code. And then there's some really cool kicker incentives based on specific technologies that you might choose to install. Again, if you're interested in learning more about that, feel free to give me a call and I'll get you started. So in terms of the technical assistance services, it is 300 hours of no-cost TA. They'll support you throughout the entire development process. They'll help you submit the build incentive application and provide you with a number of other educational resources and probably help you with accessing some other programs as well. I know we do referrals internally at the California Housing Partnership. I think AA does something similar with the programs that they work on. So really plays nicely with other programs like I mentioned before. Some of the common issues that I'm sure Ari will get into are things like heat pumps, heating and cooling, envelope improvements, or really just any sort of design challenges that you're facing. We've got a handy chart here that kind of illustrates some of the common issues. One of the things that I think is always a little bit funny is if you're doing an all-electric design, you can't have gas grills, but you can have charcoal grills because there's no good electric outdoor grill on the market now. But everything else, you should be able to electrify. So I think with that, I'll be handing it over to Ari Usher now to kick off the design review portion of this program. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ian. That was a great overview. So yes, I'm Ari Usher. I am a project manager with Association for Energy Affordability. Really happy to be presenting to you today. So when you do engage with the build program, you have access to our entire team of technical assistance providers. You've got AEA, my organization, providing all electric and incentive layering assistance. PRC providing application assistance for those projects that are pursuing incentives, and CHPC providing outreach and education. So what is TA? Today, we're going to deep dive a little bit into some of the offerings and provide some great examples, things for you to think about today, and also hopefully encourage you to apply for TA. So stakeholders for new all-electric affordable housing have access to no-cost consultation, assistance, and education from Build's team of experts. And just would like to highlight once again that it's open to all stakeholders, including architects and design firms, municipalities, and consultants, as well as building owners and development. So what you're going to get from TA in all electric assistance, we can support you through the whole project development from schematic design all the way through construction and even some post-occupancy system support. And then incentive layering assistance. This is a great resource to remember for TA, for Build. There are, Build has some great incentives, but there are other electrification incentive programs out there. So let us help you educate yourself on what's out there and think about which might be a good fit for your project. And this is also a great resource for architects or municipalities to kind of understand the landscape and bring those to then your developer clients or contacts. So we're really going to focus in on the build design review. I'd just like to talk a little bit about what this review is. We do a deep dive into your plan set and provide project-specific recommendations or opportunities, really, to improve the building from energy efficiency to constructability to systems operations and even health and safety considerations. So this is most helpful when the project is early on in design so that changes can still be made, but that you do have a full set of drawings, including architectural and MEP plan sets. That said, we always recommend design review, even for projects that are in construction. And really, what we're not doing is telling you what you have to do to make the project compliant with build or anything else. While we will point out any changes needed for eligibility, this is really about introducing you to things that you may not have thought about before. And there's going to be a lot of comments typically, even if they can't all be implemented on the project we're discussing. It's a great opportunity to then carry forward to future projects. And with that overview, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Vedika to introduce how we review the plumbing systems.
Thanks, Ari, for that great introduction to technical assistance. Hi, everybody. My name is Vedika, and I work with Association for Energy Affordability on providing technical assistance for the build program. So we wanted to give you an idea of the type of analysis that we do during the design review. As Ari mentioned, there are a lot of recommendations that we make, but one of the most important and elaborate sections in our design review is the plumbing systems recommendation. So heat pump water heating technology is different from fossil fuel water heating, and some design teams may be unfamiliar with this type of technology. So that's really where we can be of help. And these are just some of the considerations that we take into account while analyzing different heat pump water heating systems. So once we receive the design plans from the project teams, one of the first steps in analyzing the plumbing system is sizing the hot water demand and storage requirements. We use a tool called the EcoSizer. You can see a screenshot of that tool on this slide. And we use that for sizing central heat pump water heaters. And we also use industry standard guidelines for unitary heat pump water heater sizing. We basically receive metrics from these tools that tell us what the hot water demand and storage requirements are for a specific building. And we then use these metrics to guide our recommendations for the water heaters and assess the systems that different projects have spec'd and if they can meet these requirements. We also have a look at the specific water heaters that are specified in the plumbing plan sets, and we take a deep dive into the spec sheets for the same. Once we've analyzed the performance metrics, if we feel like the heat pump water heater might not be appropriate for this project, we can offer recommendations for alternative systems. Now, this can be different models by the same manufacturer or even recommending a heat pump from a different manufacturer. Some cases where we might do this would be we might recommend a system which has a lower sound rating than the one specified, especially for unitary systems, or even recommending a heat pump water heater that has a lower refrigerant value, which is more efficient than the one that might be specified. Heat pump water heaters can be very complex, especially central heat pump water heater plants. They have many components that need to be incorporated. So while conducting our design review analysis, we ensure that the plan sets include these components, and we like to recommend the latest technologies and some of the most efficient components like electronic mixing valves, variable speed recirc pumps, and also thermostatic balancing valves. And finally, we take a look at the piping diagrams that are provided to ensure that all the components of the heat pump water heating plant are piped efficiently and just to ensure the highest performance for the heat pump. We also compare piping diagrams from manufacturers, which basically recommend some of the best practices that we've seen manufacturers suggest, and also from many other projects that we've assisted across the board. And I'll hand it back over to Ari to discuss one of our considerations in greater detail.
Yeah, thanks again, Vedika. So I'm just going to provide kind of an example of what we might recommend for a central heat pump water heating plant. So what you're seeing here is a piping diagram. As you can see, there's a lot of piping going on. We've got storage tanks, we've got heat pumps, we've got a swing tank, we've got mixing valves. So there's some pretty high impact recommendations that we would bring up here. The first one, we are going to always recommend that vertical storage tanks are installed instead of horizontal storage tanks. So when storage is piped in series, as you see here, vertical storage tanks are going to allow for maximum effective storage. It also helps with stratification of the water storage, which improves heat pump operation and also ensures that the hottest water is right there at the top, ready to be delivered to the building. So that's one recommendation here. And then the next one is going to be on reverse return piping. Reverse return piping is a best practice to balance flow through the heat pumps in any central plant. Without reverse return piping, what's going to happen is the first heat pumps in line are going to receive more of the flow than those kind of at the back of the line. And that's going to reduce the overall efficiency of the plant and also cause quicker wear and tear on those first couple of heat pumps. So, showing reverse return piping in the diagram here is going to give you the best chance to have that reverse return piping, a little bit of a tongue twister, installed on the project. And then finally, Vedika mentioned, alternate system recommendations. So we would, talk with the design team about considering alternate heat pumps. You see, we've got 24 smaller capacity heat pumps in this plant. We might suggest thinking about fewer higher capacity heat pumps for this system. Could improve operations of this whole plant there. Number one, by kind of decreasing the overall piping complexity and, really allowing for that balanced flow to be more easily accomplished. And it could also have space consideration benefits as well. So that's kind of one example of a piping review. And now I'm going to hand it back to Vedika to introduce our HVAC systems review.
So another section of our design review that we spend a great amount of time analyzing is the HVAC section. And one of the first things that we look at are different ventilation strategies. We have seen different project teams take on exhaust or supply only or balanced ventilation strategies. And once we receive the plan sets, we analyze the building as a whole and each individual dwelling units and determine what the most appropriate ventilation strategy is for the project in general. And once we have the appropriate ventilation strategy in place, we take a look at the different conditioning options. And this involves dissecting the pros and cons of ducted versus ductless systems or split systems or even packaged terminal heat pumps. And of course, after analyzing the plan sets even further and determining which one of these is the best fit, finally, we have a look at ways in which we can make the system most energy efficient, and that involves providing recommendations like incorporating ERVs, switching from regular PTHP to R32 PTHP, increasing heat pump efficiencies, or switching to an inverter-driven heat pump.
Awesome. So let's take a look at some specific examples of HVAC recommendations. All right, so what we're looking at here is an equipment schedule for the space conditioning. And the first thing that we're going to do is take the model number and pull up the spec sheet and just take a look at that. And I'd like to just have everyone notice that what we're seeing here is a compressor that has a SEER rating of 14 to 16, and that's the efficiency rating. So just keep that in mind as we look further into this example. All right, so our first recommendation here is going to be to consider an alternate model. We're going to want to consider an inverter-driven heat pump rather than a single-stage heat pump. And when we look at the spec sheet for an inverter-driven heat pump, you'll notice that the efficiency is 28.1 here. So that's a pretty big improvement. And I'll just go a little bit into, the technology behind this. So a single stage compressor basically has two modes. It's either off or it's on. And it's always going to be sized to meet the heating and cooling demands on the coldest and hottest days of the year. But for most of the year, you're not going to need that much space conditioning. However, since it only has on or off, it means that the compressor is going to be, short cycling on those days that aren't the hottest and coldest of the year. That's going to, reduce efficiency because there is a high energy cost for startup, and it's also going to increase wear and tear on the systems. So with an inverter compressor, it's actually a variable speed compressor, and the compressor can speed up or slow down on a smooth curve to meet the demand. And as you can see with the efficiency there, it has a big impact. The other thing about these heat pumps, couple of extra benefits, they do have a smaller footprint than your single stage compressors. So for space considerations, this is a great option. And they also have a lower sound rating as well. So this is a pretty big impact change. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a ventilation plan here. What we're looking at is a unit plan, and I'll just orient kind of the group here to what we're seeing. We've got a ducted fan coil unit supplying conditioned air to the living space and the bedrooms. And then for ventilation, we've got an exhaust fan in the bathroom. And that is the only ventilation fan in this unit. So indoor air quality could be improved by providing balanced ventilation rather than exhaust-only ventilation. This is going to make the unit more healthy by bringing in fresh outdoor air into this unit. So there's a couple ways to provide balanced ventilation. The first being adding a supply fan. So you could have one supply and one exhaust fan for this unit. And then to take that one step further, you could instead replace this single exhaust fan with an ERV, an energy recovery ventilator. That will have the supply and exhaust in a single piece of equipment and have the added benefit of heat recovery as well. So it'll be improving indoor air quality and energy efficiency. And now in terms of ducting, how would we actually want to see that fresh air supplied? We always recommend supplying fresh air to all of the living spaces and bedrooms. So if you're going to add on a supply fan here, what that would look like is ducting the supply air to all three of these spaces in the unit. However, there's another way to do that too. You could bring the supply air, since you've already got a ducted fan coil, and supply that outdoor air right at the return of the fan coil. It'll be then sucked up into the air handler and distributed to all the living spaces. So in this way, we'll be able to enhance indoor air quality without adding too much ducting to this design. Okay, great. So, we've covered a couple of examples from plumbing and HVAC review. We also have many recommendations for envelope improvements and also electrical plans. We're not going over all of the recommendations that we could make today, just providing a handful of examples. But finally, what I would like to focus in on is renewable energy and storage planning. So what we're talking about here is solar PV and battery storage. This is something that we always like to provide technical assistance on because it is kind of an up-and-coming technology. While battery storage isn't currently implemented on many projects, it is something that is going to be more common as we move forward with electrification, with code changes, and with changes to solar interconnection tariffs. So I'm going to provide a little bit of context for the folks on this call. Some of you may be aware that in last year, the CPUC published a new solar PV interconnection tariff. So the economics of solar PV are influenced in part by the interconnection tariff with the utility. For projects under the new net billing tariff, which we also call NEM 3, one of the main differences from NEM 2 is that the export credit for solar generation has been reduced under NEM 3. And this is affecting customers served by electric IOUs. And the takeaway for this is that projects under NEM 3 are really going to be benefited by maximizing self-utilization of solar. So when you have a solar installation, the time when the solar is producing the most energy is not always the time when the building is using the most energy. So what happens is the additional solar goes out onto the grid and an export credit is applied. But under NEM 3, we'll want to maximize self-utilization. And we can really do that with load shifting strategies for the building and also with battery storage, allowing that additional solar to be stored up to be used at a later time. So, you know, while battery is a newer technology for a lot of folks, what we're going to really talk to teams about is battery ready considerations. If it doesn't make sense to install a battery on the development right now, we want to make sure that you're thinking about the future when you may be able to install a battery. So there's going to be a couple considerations to make the building battery ready. You may remember before solar PV was as prevalent as it is today, there was a thing called Solar Ready, where we were making our buildings ready for the future installation of solar PV. So now we've got battery ready. So some of these considerations are going to be identifying a location for the future battery, you know, having a place planned on the site to install a battery in the future, and then providing with that location the required setbacks, fireproofing and weatherproofing, and ventilation for the battery if it's in an enclosed space, providing conduit to the solar PV and to the electrical room, and providing capacity in the electrical room with a sub panel for battery. Great. So switching gears a little bit here, we're going to go into build layering assistance. As I kind of mentioned earlier on, layering assistance is a way to help keep costs down. So especially for developers of affordable housing, you know, we all know that incentive and rebate programs can actually be an important part of the funding stack and or act as gap funding. We in Build have talked to developers who have told us that, you know, without the build incentive or other incentives, they wouldn't have been able to install these energy efficient or sustainable features, which we all know are a huge benefit to the project, both in providing environmental sustainability and in keeping costs down for building owners and for building residents. So it makes a lot of sense to look at maximizing the incentives you're getting. And one way to do that is layering programs and making sure you're making the most use of the programs that are out there. So Build is a new construction program. I'm just going to kind of give an introduction to some of the new construction electrification programs that are out there in the state at this time, to just make you aware of what's out there. And if you bring your questions into Build TA, we can talk more about this, educate you on what these programs are, how they work, and which might be the most useful for your projects. So first of all, we've got CEC electrification programs. So we've got Build, which is for low income, single family and multifamily, located in the natural gas IOU territories. And then the flip side of that is the California Electric Homes program. So this is really serving market rate, residences, single family, multifamily, and manufactured homes, and it is statewide. And I'd also like to mention that Cal EHP is open for naturally occurring affordable housing and also affordable housing that doesn't meet the low income requirements of build can access Cal EHP. So between the two of these, it's likely that there's going to be some funding for your all-electric project from one of these CEC programs. Okay, and then layering on top of that, we've got ratepayer funded programs for high-rise multifamily and commercial properties. We've got CEDA, the California Energy Design Assistance Program. This is available in IOU territories. And then for low-rise multifamily properties in the electric IOU territories, we've got Energy Smart Homes. And then this is a very specific territory, but in Southern California, Edison territory, we've got Clean Energy Homes. This is serving those developments in SCE territory that are not in a IOU gas territory. So I'll say that again, in SCE territory, but a non-IOU gas territory. So we're thinking about those areas that have a municipal gas utility, like Long Beach, for example, or those areas that aren't served by a gas utility at all, but rather rely on propane. So these are some programs, funded by the utilities. And then another layer, we've got municipal utility programs. Depending on where the project is located, in LA DWP, we've got the Zero by Design program. This is for high-rise multifamily and commercial projects exceeding code requirements in LA DWP territory. And then in the SMUD territory, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, we've got the All-Electric Smart Homes program for all-electric, single-family, and multifamily. And these can, again, be layered on top of the other incentives that you are receiving. Yeah, so those are kind of building-specific programs. And then we've got programs specifically incentivizing renewable and energy storage. The Self-Generation Incentive Program, or SGIP, is going to incentivize battery storage for residential and non-residential properties in PG&E, SCE, SoCalGas, and SDG&E. This is a great one to layer on top of build if you want to look at installing battery. There's a build kicker for battery. And then if we can also layer on SGIP, we may be looking at some pretty good funding. Okay, then we have SOMA, the Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing Program. This is for VNEM solar properties where the solar credit is benefiting the tenants on affordable multifamily housing in the electric IOU territories. And this has been around for a while, serving existing construction, installing solar, but recently this was actually approved to serve new construction as well. So, the rulemaking is still in process for SOMA for new construction, but, it will be available as a funding source for solar on affordable multifamily new construction, which is very exciting. And then SMUD also has a solar program. They do have a community solar program called Neighborhood Solar Shares, which offers credits on tenant bills for purchasing shares in the community solar. And then we've got EV charging programs. So this is, again, more equipment specific. And these are the kind of programs that it may not look like a huge dollar sign if you're just, thinking about funding 1 or 2 EV chargers. But the difference in being able to install a couple more EV chargers is pretty good for a project. So we really do encourage you to access technical assistance so we can kind of help you to do some of that back end work to figure out these programs. let us assist you there so that we can really maximize your funding. So the EV charging programs that are out there, there is Southern California Edison Charge Ready. There is LADWP's Charge Up LA. Silicon Valley Clean Energy, which is a CCA, has a EV charging rebate program for new construction. And then you've got a couple of statewide programs. So Cal EVIP and Communities in Charge are both programs that are funding publicly available EV chargers around the state. The current funding waves are closed for both these programs, but there's more expected in the future. So important to keep these in mind. Now, I did mention CCA before. These CCA stands for Community Choice Aggregator. CCAs are an alternate to electric utilities for electric supply. So through CCA, communities can pool electricity loads to purchase clean energy and develop local projects and programs. Aggregators work in partnership with the region's existing IOU, which continues to deliver power and maintain the grid. And there are CCAs across the state, as you can see in this map here. If your project is going to be thinking about purchasing power through a CCA, it's definitely worthwhile to visit the webpage and see what programs they have out there, because they oftentimes have efficiency or electrification rebates available and changing all the time. Yeah, and again, those are just new construction programs. So, build is new construction, which is why we focused on that, but we do have a lot of existing buildings through the state as well. And those are going to need to be electrified as well. So just as a kind of a snapshot, there are a lot of existing construction programs out there. And, don't be afraid to ask us questions about your existing building portfolio, because we can definitely connect you to the right people to talk to. Just as an overview of some of the programs that are out there, we've got the TECH program, we've got the IRA funded programs, HOMES and HERA, we've got regional energy network programs, the low income weatherization program or LIWIP, SOMA, which again, is been for existing construction and continues to be available for new construction. We've got the CAMR program in LADWP territory, and Energy Smart Homes, which is available for existing construction as well as new construction. All right, and with that, I think that's our content. So thanks so much. We have some time now for questions.
Yeah, thank you again, Ari and Vedika. That's been a really informative presentation. I even learned something, and I work on this program, so how about that? So we do have a few questions. A couple have already been answered, but just for the recording, yes, Marianne, this will be recorded and available later. Danielle says it should be available this afternoon. Jay Ross asked, can workforce projects use this program with units at 80 to 120% AMI? Vedika answered that the requirement for this program is that at least 80% of the units should be at 60% AMI or below. That's kind of a general rule of thumb for a lot of these programs that were mentioned in the lighting section. But I would like to point out that the build guidelines do have a little bit of flexibility based on the geographical location of the development. So even if you're not quite at that, I'd say it's still definitely worth looking into the build program. It might be able to help you based on location. Let's see, Michelle Servin asked, does technical assistance for these disciplines include for modular construction as well? Vedika answered, yes, we have worked with modular construction projects as well. So that's good to know that there's a wide variety of different housing types and different construction types that are able to be helped through this design review and technical assistance. So we've got a couple other questions here. Again, feel free to put your questions in the chat. Let's see. We've got an anonymous attendee asking, is Build currently oversubscribed or are applications still being taken? Applications are still being taken. Funding is broken up by IOU territory. So San Diego Gas and Electric is pretty much fully subscribed. PG&E is getting there, but I think there's still a little bit of funding left. Southwest Gas still has a little under $1 million available. And then SoCal Gas, that's basically the Southern California territory, that has about $14 million in financial incentives still available. So let's see. We've got another question from Ron Tackett. How are you defining a fourplex? Is it considered single family or multifamily housing? Would somebody like to answer that? We also have David Avina on here from AEA, who is able to help answer questions as well.
Yeah, I can take that. So yeah, a fourplex, when you're looking at energy modeling and Title 24 compliance, it really depends if it's a townhome style or if it's like a different units on different levels. So if you've got a townhome fourplex where the units only share walls but not floor and ceilings, that's treated as single family. Otherwise, it's going to be treated as multifamily. But for the purposes of the build program, it is open to multifamily construction and also single family construction. So we could assist you with your all electric development, whether it's single family or multifamily. I'd also
Great.
like to just add on, Ian, you were mentioning about the incentive availability and how the pipeline is looking there. So even in those territories where incentives are fully subscribed, TA, technical assistance, is still open and freely available. So would definitely just like to promote that. You can still bring in your PG&E projects, your SDG&E projects, and benefit from technical assistance.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really important clarification. I've got, looks like 2 questions kind of regarding eligibility, and then there's a couple other questions that are more technical in nature. So I'll kind of hit the quicker ones real fast. Tom White asked, does Build work with CETA for high-rise or are they redundant?
Yeah, they are not redundant. They can layer. So CETA does have 2 components as well. It has a incentive component and it has a design assistance component. You can definitely think about layering the incentives for both programs. And then for CETA, if you don't need as much Build TA because you're getting CETA TA, that's fine also.
Jeff Green is asking, do you have a link to the TA program? Yeah, looks like Vedka is putting it in there in the Q&A, but yeah, we can put that in the chat. I'll be happy to send it out in emails as well. It's a really quick application. It takes maybe 10 minutes to fill out if you're being slow. So we've got another question here from Jacqueline Wu. Do you mind repeating which EV charging programs are slated to have future funding?
Yeah, and we'll be sharing these slides after as well, but let me go back to that one. We've got Cal EVIP and Communities in Charge.
Cool. All right. So I'll move on to some of these more technical questions. Jay Ross as asking about something that I've heard come up, but he says, they said, I looked at this program, but couldn't use it because of the amount of solar panels required to meet the energy efficiency was extra high. It would have required rooftop solar panels and carports with solar panels, or at least they think it was this program. Have you found this problem with other projects? Do you require significantly more solar than the typical CBC solar needed to meet regular Title 24? So I guess generally touching on kind of the complications of installing enough solar to meet kind of program requirements and efficiency requirements. How do
Yeah, that's
you address that design challenge?
yeah, that's a great question. What you're getting at is the tenant utility bill savings requirement of Build. So for this program, we need to show that the residents of the all-electric building are going to see a 5% bill savings when compared to what they'd be paying for kind of a standard mixed fuel building. So that's really the requirement. Now, how to actually make sure that we're showing that, you can do it a couple different ways. The first way, and the way that a lot of projects do it, is by using solar PV and allocating that credit back to the tenants through a VNEM agreement. Now, the amount of solar that is going to be needed to meet that bill savings, it really does vary project by project. So for some projects, we see that it's basically similar to the code required solar. In some locations or for some specific projects, it may actually be higher than code required solar. So it really does depend. But I'd also like to mention that there are other ways to kind of to meet this bill savings requirement. Solar is just one of the ways, but with TA, we can also help you look at if there's any efficiency upgrades that could be made to help lower the utility bills, the expected utility bills. So we can really look at designing for energy efficiency to try to, reduce that solar PV required number. And then I'll also mention, coming forward with battery storage, that's going to be another way to meet this bill savings requirement also.
Cool. Okay, thank you for that, Ari. We've got 3 more questions here. Jacqueline Wu is asking, for bounce ventilation, what if the outdoor air is bad? Would bounce ventilation be a less favorable option then? So I guess kind of the external climatic conditions.
Yeah, great question. And really important as we're thinking about, wildfires or places near the highway or things like that. So first of all, your supply fan is going to have a code required air filter on it. But, that's not always going to filter out all of the smoke, especially in kind of areas that are vulnerable to wildfire. Sometimes we see supply fans with a control switch installed so that the resident actually has the ability to turn off the outdoor air supply if the air quality gets really bad.
Cool.
Yeah, but for balanced ventilation, when the air quality outside is good, it's a huge benefit to be able to bring outdoor air in. In an exhaust only ventilation strategy, what that's doing is relying on gaps in the building envelope to allow fresh air to filter into the unit by negative pressurization with the supply fan. And that used to work when our buildings didn't have envelopes that were quite as tight. So now the tighter that the envelope is in the building, the more energy efficient the envelope is, the harder it is to get fresh outdoor air in, which is really why balanced ventilation becomes important.
Very good. Let's see, we've got a question from Ayako Utsumi. Is there progress on standardizing parts, set up PV to main panel interconnection among all the different utilities? So I guess addressing utility connections and standardization there.
Yeah, if you've got any follow-up questions after I kind of address this, please put some more in the chat. But I think what you're getting at is the difference in interconnection between different utilities. So I think across the investor-owned utilities, you're going to have pretty similar interconnection agreements. You're going to have, pretty similar tariffs for your export credit, and you're going to have pretty similar availability of virtual net energy metering for multifamily buildings. But then with your municipal utilities, it's going to be different just because they're not subject to the same oversight requirements. So it's going to be pretty utility specific, the interconnection agreements in those locations like Riverside or Sacramento that have municipal utilities. So I hope
Wonderful.
that answered the question, but if not, yeah, feel free to follow up.
Yeah, I put my email in the chat. Anybody feel free to reach out to me if you're looking for more information or referrals. I'll be able to help get you connected to the appropriate folks. Looks like we got one last question from Jacqueline Wu. Do you have any information on how the IRA's Solar for All program is going to be administered? And will some of it go into SOMA? So I've been monitoring the IRA programs for a while now. EPA's just recently announced their Solar for All awards. And to be honest, I am not sure exactly where it's going to be going into in California. I know who the awardees are, but what exactly the programs are going to entail, how it's going to filter out into communities, into developers, and to housers, is still kind of unclear at this moment. But it's definitely something we're paying attention to, especially in relation to SOMA. So yeah, I don't know if anybody has any other insights on that, but basically it's still kind of getting sorted out, is my understanding of that program. Probably a good topic for a future webinar, though.
Definitely.
Cool. So if there's no other questions, I think we can hand it back to Danielle now for any scamp housekeeping and closing remarks. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian, Ari, and Vedika. That was a great session. As mentioned before, we will be sending out the recording and the slides for this later this afternoon. So check your inboxes for that. And I think we're all good unless there are any last minute questions. We'll give it 1 second. But I think we're all good. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time.